Good evening, and welcome to Peace Week 2022. We made it. This is the first day, the first event of Peace Week, which we've been striving to now for these 92 days of peace through unity, which began in World Unity Week. And in World Unity Week, we were also blessed to have the presence of Dr. Vandana Shiva. Again, Dr. Vandana Shiva has joined us along with Ernst Götsch and John Liu. Vandana, welcome to Peace Week.
Hello.
And Ernst in Brazil, it's wonderful to have you with us. Welcome.
Thank you.
And John, great to have you with us.
Thanks very much. Great to be here.
I'm going to do a brief introduction of our luminaries here today, but let me just set the scene a little bit. Back in June, we honored the 7 foundations of life, which was coming from the first primary task of eco-governance. And those 7 foundations of life set the scene of the topics across the week of World Unity Week: earth, water, fire, air, climate, biodiversity, and the web of life were celebrated as the 7 foundations of life. And now in Peace Week, of course, orientated around the International Day of Peace, which is Wednesday, the 21st of September, and the 40th anniversary of the first observation of the International Day of Peace, which this year is marking. And this year in Peace Week, we are releasing the 7 core needs as the second primary task of eco-governance, and really to ensure that conditions are there for all humans and animals to have these 7 core needs met. And we're starting with the basic one, number 1, of the living soil. And so we've assembled here an incredible panel of the leading luminaries in this field, and we are delighted to be hearing from them as we go through and have this rich discussion. So I'm going to start by introducing Dr. Vandana Shiva. And of course, many of you will know the incredible work that Dr. Shiva is doing. Vandana Shiva is an intellectual and activist from India who has worked in a wide range of differing fields, inspiring change globally. Her activism is rooted in promoting counter-development and supporting grassroots networks, women's rights, and ecology. As the author of numerous important books and articles, Shiva has shown a lifetime interest in campaigning against genetic engineering and the negative impacts of globalization, advocating for the crucial importance of preserving and celebrating biodiversity. And just in brief, Ernst Götsch. Ernst was born in 1948 in Switzerland and migrated to Brazil in the early 1980s, establishing himself in a farm in southern Bahia. Years before, Götsch had decided to quit a research job on genetic enhancement at the state-owned FAP-Z-Rich, today's Agroscope, after a disturbing questioning. Wouldn't we achieve greater results if we sought ways of cultivation that favor the development of plants rather than creating genotypes that support the bad conditions we impose them? This was the question that started that part of the journey for Ernst. There's a lot more to say about all of these speakers, but I want to give more time to them. So let me tell you, John D. Liu is a journalist, filmmaker, ecologist whose work documenting the restoration of China's Loess Plateau has helped to show that it is possible to restore natural ecological systems rather than simply accept the threats of climate change species lost. John D. Liu is currently ecosystem ambassador to the Common Land Foundation, which has been pioneering privately invested ecosystem restoration around the world. These are 3 extraordinary luminaries in this field, and it's delightful to be here to begin. So we're going to start with you, Dr. Shiva, to tell us, what do you love about living soil?
In our language, living soil is Mati Ma, the sacred Mother Earth. Terra Viva, the living earth, Terra Madre. So what I love about living soil is we are born of living soil. We are of the soil. And it is not an accident that the word humus is the root of the word human. Just that in recent times we've forgotten it. So what I love about living soil is we wouldn't be here without it. And every catastrophe of our time is related to not taking care of living soil and treating it as dirt, empty container to put nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. Worse, since colonialism, to define it as this much square foot of property, of private property, which is the reason we never regenerate and give back, or worse, to treat the earth as a disposable planet. That's why so much work is being done on escape, escape to Mars. The billionaires have no love for the living soil. Therefore, they have no love for the living earth. And I think, as John says repeatedly, the panic part of our ecological awareness needs to be put behind us. The awareness part and giving back and loving the earth, and every step of loving, turning it into action, that the soil gives us hope in times of catastrophe.
Wonderful, beautiful. Thank you, Vandana. Let's go to you, Ernst. Tell us about your love for living soil.
Well, I thank Vandana Shiva for the first part. I try to add a second part as a farmer. Yeah, it's heart and body and brain farmer. With the pain, well, we are living Earth, as Vandana said, it's our mother. We come by incidence of the main culture. Let's say we are come from the same root up to the language. It's the Indo-Germanic. Mother Earth is the same thing, and we are still, if we study ancient German, we understand without any problem 20% of modern Indian language, as to say, and so we have the same roots. And now, what I love of living Earth, I'm focusing upon. I know that as a farmer, I depend on have care for, and then do all in order to improve soil conditions. And this because all plants all plants, they are something like on Earth, let's say on the continents, islands, they are something like the hair on our head. They are the extremities of this living Earth, and they depend. They are all interconnected with them. So we have to see that the micro reason they create. So you treat one plant, you make one intervention, it affects all the other ones, and if you know this, so we act in a completely different way. It's a macroorganism, and on this macroorganism, we are something like the animals, are something like we are comparable with bacteria, and they act upon and they interact in the place, and we should. That's to say, I do at least to try to do it, and not only try to do it. The interspecific relations between all living beings on this planet, with exception of modern man and some of his, by him, degraded, domesticated animals, they are fundamental. They are based upon unilaterally on unconditional love and cooperation, and we depend on one of the other. If we act as we act, with something like suicide, that's to say, we with our competition, we rough competition with what we use nowadays, and trying to translate all to money is suicidal. That's to say, it brings us away. We have not to come back. We have to go forward once again and try to reconnect us with Earth. And I see this. I'm working now since 40 years, nearly 40 years, 38 years on one soil, which had, that is on a piece of Earth, which had been considered as non-adapted for the cultivation of cocoa, because being, well, described as a poor soil and lack of minerals. And in the meantime, let's say 10 years later, and in the meantime, much more even, they allege me that blame me that I have the best soil, or the best earth, or the other best piece of land of Bahia, that is of the whole cocoa area. This is only, in my interpretation, due to the fact that I'm take care for this piece of earth and planting, focusing on photosynthesis, focusing on doing what I came to conclusion it could be, should be our function on this planet. This is doing what all other species do, what all other living beings do, to increase life, to act in a way so that our interaction becomes beneficial and turns into a positive, or will achieve a positive balance energetically, as well as in terms of the quantity and quality of established life. And if we do this, we go with in big steps, or in great steps, come back to the paradise. That's to say, soil is the fundament upon all is growing, all is thriving, and I'm trying to do the best what I can, knowing that vegetation is part of, it depends on this, and we as animals depend on this.
Thank you, Ernst. Thank you. Very fulsome answer. And John, how about for you? How would you describe your relationship to living soil? And tell anything you want to share about your work to cultivate the living soil.
Well, I started my working life as a journalist, and so I think I had been heavily influenced by the social systems in the world, and all the media and all of the education that I got. And so I focused primarily on the politics and the economics and the cultural aspects. But I had a very fortunate situation that I was asked to document the rehabilitation of the upper and middle reaches of the Yellow River in China. And when I saw this, I had a very interesting question, because I wondered, how could the most populous ethnic group on the earth come from a place that was so massively degraded? And I began to study it. And what I found was that over historical time, humans had destroyed the system. And later I found that in all the cradles of civilization, the same thing has happened. And I found that this is what's happening in the industrialized and urban current situation in many parts of the world. And this has led to massive problems, including climate change, biodiversity loss, and I guess it should be the other way around. I think biodiversity loss was first, and the climate's changing because of the loss of so much biodiversity and so much biomass, and the disruption to the organic layer of the soil. So I started to study it, and when I studied it, the traditional way of studying it was to look at geological soils and the makeups of geological soils. But I was noticing that in my observations, it was the organic layer and not the living soils, and not the geologic soils, which were most important. And as I went further into this, and I was comparing it to the political and economic and cultural things that I've been covering for a long time at the highest level, and I realized that this was not central to human civilization at this time. So I began to look at all the systems, and I was interested that I was seeing the degraded systems in the cradles of civilization, and in other parts of the world where, especially other cultures besides the Judeo-Christian Islamic world, the Abrahamic traditions, had protected large areas, and that's where you found wonderful forests and grasslands and wetlands and enormous herds of animals and tremendous biodiversity. So I realized that the cultural understanding that people in the more indigenous areas had was actually a higher form of consciousness than the idea that domination through military force or ownership of property was representing. And as I saw this, I also realized, and while I was studying the rehabilitation of the Loess Plateau, I realized it's possible to rehabilitate all the degraded lands on the earth if we so choose. If that's the central intention of human civilization, well, it can be done. So this made me consider that there was nothing further that I needed to do but understand this fully and participate in transforming human civilization to focus on the restoration of all degraded lands on the planet. So this inspired me. It gave me hope at a time when I was looking, and I think it's worse now than before. We're in a very dangerous moment in human civilization. So it's been very comforting to me to see that the earth and life is so resilient and that the soil can be restored. And I'm right now in a place where 100 years anthroposophic biodynamic agriculturalists have been maintaining the soils. And the soil is a 3/4 of a meter higher than in the surrounding landscapes. And so this makes me understand that in 100 years you could grow the soils by at least a 1/2 meter, maybe 3/4 meter, and maybe more if you really went completely fanatical about soil growth. And that's exactly what we need to do with sea level rise and other problems, and the regulation of hydrology. So that's been my experience, and certainly we need love and forgiveness and grace at this time when what human civilization is expressing is so different than where we need to be.
Thank you, John. Thank you. That beautiful answer, and you it's taking us towards the solutions, which is something we really want to focus on, and we want to talk more specifically about. Let me just say, I know we have many co-hosts here who will help deal with the disturbance in the chat. We're not going to worry about that. I'm sure we can find a way to remove them. But we're talking here about the 7 core needs and ensuring that the access for all animals and humans is there for the 7 core needs. And this is very important for our global community, particularly this community that is gathering around the ideas of peace and unity, and really to ground that in the very work that you three are leading with the living soil. I want to take a moment just to share a very brief video which lays out the 7 core needs, just in very brief, and then we'll come back to Ms. Vandana Shiva to talk a little bit more about the connection to living soil as we get towards some of the solutions. So let's enjoy this. Beautiful. So just gives us a real sort of a taste of what these seven core needs are dedicated to and devoted to. So building upon what John was sharing there, Dr. Shiva, of this sort of optimism about the regenerative power that is life. And as we look to really meet the challenges that we're faced with the degeneration, what can we say, what would you say, Vandana, is your optimal local to global strategy for ensuring the guaranteed access of all humans and animals to living soil and the whole system's healing benefits of such a strategy? We'd love to hear your response.
You know, in the English language, not only is the cosmology fragmented, but the words have become so divided. You know, soil is different from land, is different from earth, is different from place. Each of them creates totally different imaginations for people. And for all indigenous cultures, all of them are the same. Soil is Mother Earth. Soil is the land, which cannot be owned as private property. It is the commons we care for, and it is our place. Yeah. So, you know, what you've described as eco-governance is what I talk about as earth democracy. Basically, it's living on the earth, recognizing the freedoms of other beings to be alive, therefore not encroaching into their ecological spaces. Yeah? Soil is one of the elements of the ecological space, but water is too, and the two are related. So just as both Ernst and John were talking about the power of regeneration, I don't think it's about optimism, it's about realism. It's about recognizing that the earth and soil is alive. We've treated it as dead. We've converted terra madre into terra nullius, the empty land, and the people who took core of the land weren't people either. That's why indigenous people were enslaved, and that's why they were displaced and very often pushed to extinction. So making peace with the earth and the earth family is making peace with the cultures of the earth and the soil. And recognizing that they have done this so long that they need to be teachers. 60,000 years of farming in Australia, they're called Bushmen. No, they're gardeners. 10,000 years recorded in India, 10,000 years in the Brazilian Amazon. I think King wrote a book about farmers of 40 centuries. Yeah, we are talking about an activity that we have known how to be engaged in with love, with care, with unconditional love, as Ernst said so beautifully. Because the only relationship we can have with the soil is unconditional love. And then the soil, of course, gives in abundance with unconditional love. And I think all the work, all of us do shows that because the soil is living, even when it's made passive in our minds, regeneration is actually very fast. So we, the Navdanya farm, the Earth University, where, soon we'll be beginning our annual course on returning to the earth, which is, turning to living soil, living seed, living food, living economies. It used to be a devastated eucalyptus plantation and a sugarcane plantation. It was just sand. There was no life in it. When we put water, it would just run away. And we had to irrigate so often. 3 things have happened in these few years of loving the soil. First, we have soil now, not just sand. There's a smell in soil. We have a beautiful perfume in India called mati, which means the perfume of the soil, which, when the rain falls on soil, there's a particular smell that comes. It's being turned into a perfume. This year was, as you know, terrible heat. And then, of course, extreme, crazy rains. But during the heat, we did measurements. The difference between the soil, which is not being cared for, carelessly managed with chemical fertilizers, and the soil on the Navdanya farm, which is, we have trees, we have biodiversity on the farm, the difference in temperature in the soil was 25 degrees centigrade. And that's the difference between crops surviving and crops dying. So, second, we did work on the soil moisture. 1% organic matter holds 160,000 liters of water. We don't think of the soil as a water reservoir, but it is. Whether it's in the forests or on the farms, without living soil, there is no water. Desertification is the result. And the difference was, I think some of our plots had about 25% moisture. Yeah? That means there's nothing like a drought because the soil is holding your moisture. So when, for people who, when I wrote my book, Soil, Not Oil, I realized there were a lot of people concerned about oil. But if you don't turn to soil, you'll never have a solution. Yeah. So to turn your back to oil, you have to turn to the soil. And I see at the local level, I think if we do not turn to gardening, we do not turn to taking care of, what is gardening? Taking care of the soil. The rest of the work the soil does. I love the way Ernst said it's the hair, plants are the hair of the soil. I think gardening has to be the civilizational ethic for every place in the world. So not only do we restore the soil, but we grow the basic need of food. And now we know that food grown through chemical fertilizers is nutritionally empty. It's not meeting our basic needs. And it's definitely killing the food needs of all of life. So when we take care of the soil, we're taking care of the water needs of all life. The water level on our farm has come up 70 feet. Everywhere else is disappearing. Yeah, the water level has come up because taking care of the soil, we are taking care of the water. But we're taking care of food, food for the soil organisms. I have now realized after doing this work over decades, that basically all we have to do is give back to the soil the food she gave us, a little bit of the organic matter. And then miracles happen. And all the soil organisms get their food. All the butterflies and pollinators and insects get their food. The birds get their food. The animals get their food. And the minute we shift from an anthropocentric, anti-soil cosmology to an earth-centric cosmology, soil-centered cosmology, we realize that growing food is taking care of the soil because food is the ultimate provider. Soil is the ultimate provider of food. Howard put it very well, that, it's in the soil that health begins. It's in the soil that food begins. And at the local level, it means you meet your needs. And at the global level, if you really want to have serious solutions to the pollution linked to greenhouse gases and climate change, there's only one way: turn to biodiversity and soil. The only way you can get rid of fossil fuels is turn to the biological sources of all the things that fossil fuels do today for us, with all their pollution, all their centralization, all their violence and the wars. And even more importantly, look at how quickly in Europe, from where the fossil fuel stage started 200 years ago in England with coal, and then of course gas and all, look how today European citizens have been pushed to deep poverty because of that dependence. So the only way out of poverty is we need to recreate societies. And if you talk about, an access to soil, we have to reverse the colonialism, the enclosures of land and soil. Because in India, soil could not be owned. Soil could only be regenerated. Soil could only be taken care of. I think 1780s, Lord Cornwallis writes one little piece of paper and says all the land of India and the soil of India belongs to England. And as a result of that, we have not just divided up the soil, we've taken it away from the real keepers of soil. And I think reversing that is the only way all beings on the earth will have the soil that gives them nourishment, gives them food, gives them water, and gives them home.
Beautiful, magnificent. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shiva. And you did mention also one thing very important is coming up is your course is taking a new intake coming up very, very soon. This is Return to Earth. Do I have the right one? I think I do here.
Yes, that's it, yes.
At Navdanya International, of course, your Earth University, set up by Dr. Vandana Shiva and her incredible team there. So this is the Return to Earth, A to Z of biodiversity. agroecology, regenerative organic food systems. And people can sign up still if they want to. They can still sign up for
Well, they
this.
can at least try. They write to that address and they'll be informed if there's still place left.
Right.
You know, Drona takes care of the Earth University.
Good, good, very good. Well, I will come back. I'll put this link in the chat here. And maybe I know we have a few people that are keeping the stream out on social media. We might put that link out in the chat as well so people can become aware of that. Wonderful, beautifully expressed. And so, Ernst, let's come back to you as well now. Let's, to directly to this question about what do you think would be a good, optimal, local to global strategy for ensuring the guaranteed access of all humans and animals to living soil, and what would be the whole system healing benefit of such a strategy? We hear from Vandana Shiva, the essential aspect of soil, which really unlocks so many other things. There's no accident that it's number one of the core needs, of the 7 core needs. And so as we start today with this discussion, Ernst, what do you think is the good local to global strategies to ensure that all humans and animals have their access to living soil met?
Well, I would look it from a different side a little bit. In my conclusion is that we have a very great modern man has a very great since 200,000 years when he began to become the most driving or the strongest, the biggest, the most important big animal on this planet. He has some problems, and these problems, they are often, as I said, always it has a deep philosophical root. That's to say, it's our language. It's semantic. We see, for example, natural enemies. There are no natural enemies. And we have human rights. There are no human rights. There is function. And each species, each individuals of all species, they appear equipped to communicate one with another, and they appear equipped to fulfill their functions, to realize their tasks, moved by inner pleasure. If you would understand that, we would see that from one day to the other, all changes. Recently, I had been in desert. It's all done. It's all there. If we would focus or direct, that means we use 1 year for police and army, jails, and other unuseful, stupid things. We would reforest the whole planet. Oh, from 1 year to the other. It could be done, but we don't do it because we see competition. We see say from human rights and we put it prior to our function. I see that's to say prior to our function because, as I said to you, for me it's semantic. Human rights, whatever you see, and then competition and natural enemies, and whatever you see, it's always in the same frame. Let's say it comes from the same root, and I believe to see that this misunderstanding was the reason for the end of all thousands of civilization which occurred, and not by incidents, the most of them in Mediterranean climate. That is climate which prevails between Western India to Portugal, and from Central Europe nearly to Central Africa. and then you go to Americas, it's the same thing. You go to Australia, same thing. Always that time of climate was the center of civilizations. And what man did all the time, removing forests, and this much more since 12,000 years, when the ecosystem forest began to develop or to become the dominant ecosystem on the planet. It seems, for me, it's a tragedy in an ancient Greek sense. It's a tragedy. Man, instead of looking for a new niche where he can be useful in this new ecosystem for him, he is trying to remove it, or he tried and does it up to now, all the places, removing it. We could do it in a different way. He could have chosen in a different way. And there were efforts where it had been done. I'm sure in many places in Southeast Asia, India, as well as in Indonesia and other places in Asia, Europe too, certain places, Americas too, there were examples where they tried, or they made steps towards a more integration of let's say, trying to create agro-ecosystems similar in their way of functioning, in their dynamics, and in their stratification to the natural and original ecosystem. But then dynamics of human society and it brought him for power, let's say domination. But this domination or dynamics comes or has its root in, as I say to you, philosophical roots. That's to say, you see it all over the world, man believing that he is a special being on this planet. We are not a special being. We are one of millions, of 10 millions, of 100,000 of millions of species which occurred on this planet, and all of them, they occurred for the same purpose behind, in order to, as I see it, I see life, something like part of an instrumentarium planet Earth has created for itself in order to realize his tasks, or his, as a tool to realize his function within a bigger context, the universe, let's say our galaxy, and then closer in the solar system. And so if we look at this, we will understand, we should come to understand that it's all one macroorganism, and each species which occurs, it doesn't occur because it has right. There's no human right, special human right. No, our special right of each being is to fulfill the functions for which it is equipped, it appears, or it appeared equipped to do it. And at the moment you come, or as soon as you find this function, come together with this function, you will feel it every day in all your body, that you are doing all what has to be done in order to have living soil, in order to have health, moved by inner pleasure. I myself, I am going every day, go to my plantation, happy, all happy, doing this, doing that, and I never would ask or see something as enemy. I have no enemies. All are my friends. And these are birds, these are insects, these are bugs, these are whatever you want, plants. I have no weeds. I have nothing at all which is bad. All is good. This had been said to men some 2,700 years once in the Near East. That's it's written in the Bible. And then at the same time, Aesopus in Greece, he said the same thing. That's to say, he said the same thing. And then at the same time too, 2,700 years ago, 300 years after the last collapse or big disturbance on the planet, about 3,000 years ago, he said, Lao Tse, things are not to be done, they are being done. Marvelous. things are not to be done, they're being done. So we have to find our function to it, and then ask every step I do. I always ask, what can I do so that the result of my interaction will be beneficial to all submitted, to all present and affected of my interaction. If you do that, all terms, all others, and this doesn't mean that, well, Vandana Shiva, yes, right. There is no property. We can't be owner of a piece of land. We are not owner of a planet. We are visitors and several guests for a certain time, and we appeared in order to be useful, in order to be serviceable to life. And do it, live it every day, every minute, and from then on, things will change. As I said to you, recently I've been in the desert, and people said, well, you will go out of the office if you would say that you need no irrigation in order to green it. We need no irrigation. Life on this, let's say, the circulation of sweet water on the planet, on the planet is, in my opinion, or in my way of seeing it, it corresponds 100% of the circulation of blood in our body. It's no difference. It's the same thing. And if you kill a body, blood will stop to circulate. And at the moment, if you see, there's always are plants. Let's say, even in that, we believe the desert to be desert. It's a place where it rains per year only 8 to 20 millimeters. 4 to 20 millimeters per year. It's very, very few. Temperature when I was where was 52 degrees at daytime, and hot winds. But I saw. They say there's no vegetation. I saw, after a few minutes going around in a field, I saw plants. I discovered ones. I met with one of those plants, and then I saw it several times. I measured it, 27 degrees of temperature of their body, dark green, full of water, and living in those places which since 11 months was no gut of rain, and 3 to 10% maximum of relative humidity in the air. Well, life is all present. And if we would begin with those ones, it shows what we have to do, what we could do. And if we go to agriculture, we should stop. Let's say we should stop to look at, or to divide in how it's called, in so-called exotics and non-exotics. There is function. If we have often people say that they are invasive. There are no invasive species. There are species which are able to do a job where we failed to be more useful, where we have destroyed the ecosystem. And then first, when we destroy a piece of land, first come species of the same ecosystem nearby or in the surrounding, which come from, equipped to manage or to survive, to not only to survive, to thrive. Mm-hmm. In spots with less privileged conditions in terms of water, capacity of water retention, or available minerals. And if we continue depleting that place, then there will come other species from nearby ecosystems doing the same thing. And if now Ailanthus altissima comes to Europe and invade Europe, we have to ask not to fight against Ailanthus and other so-called exotics. It's coming to do that job. I have seen them on rocks and upon old buildings in Athens, and I've seen them in Berlin. I've seen in all places. It's not an invasive plant. It's doing a job which we failed to do it better, and so they come do it. And if we employ them, adopt them, and work together with them, we will come back, and then all will come back once again. It will be different a little bit, and they will go away. That's to say, they will go as soon as we will have fulfilled their function. They will retire. They will go away. When I began here, it was in former time, 100 years, 200 years ago, 150 years ago. It was per humid tropical rainforest, 50 degrees south, meters of distributed all over the year. When I came, it's no vegetation, wind.
We might be losing Ernst there a little bit.
Was not this way about that. Was sorry.
Oh, well, I think it might have just been a technical, just a little bit of the internet broke up for a little bit, Ernst. No, please complete your
It's
thought.
complete now. Yeah, okay. They were don't. The felt down of remained 60 or 70 degrees, I see, oblique. They didn't produce anything, and in a way, I managed to re-establish a forest here using species, a lot of species of semi-dry, dry areas. In between other ones, I planted more than 1.5 million of sisal. Sisal is of subdesert in Yucatan. That's a set of places with 50 or 100 millimeters of precipitation. I used those, and then used a lot of other ones. Nowadays, 15 years later, no more sisal. And they went away. It was not necessary to kill them. They fulfilled their function and they retired themselves. And in the meantime, I have a tropical forest. That is a tropical. Say to people that it's Mata Amatlantica. That is an Amazon, Atlantic. They are a mixture between both forests. They are adopted 100% by local fauna, because I am only do the job of vector for introducing the species, and then local species, insects, mammals, and other ones. If they come to conclusion that it's opportune to have them, they plant them. They plant in the meantime Brazil nut, they plant cocoa, they plant jackfruit, they plant mangosteen, they plant whatever you want. If I am able to create an agroecosystem similar in their way of functioning, in their dynamics and their stratification of the natural and original ecosystem of the world. And then this brought me to the conclusion, see, the problems we have on our planet is not the number of human beings, is their way of behavior. If we could employ, that's to say, if we would change our way of interaction and try to convince those people to be useful. Vandana Shiva, I'm sure she sees this in her gardens, in her in university. If you achieve to give a function pleasurable, which is pleasurable for that person, it does it moved by inner pleasure. And at the end of the day, he's coming back happy. I've achieved it. And at the end of our life, which we come to the same point. For myself, I need no life insurance. I need nothing. My life insurance is be useful on this planet planting. In my case now, here, Brazil nut plant, cocoa plant planting, and then seeing every day, one insect more, a beautiful butterfly, and then that bird, it came back. And then another one, you came back to, what are you doing? I'm doing that. It's marvelous. This world, it's one big paradise only. And I see this with the other places I intervene. It's always the same. All places on this planet. I have a daughter who lives 82 degrees north in Tromsø. It's one paradise only. It's one paradise only. And the same thing the other places. I worked on 5,000, 2 meters upon sea level in surrounding of the Salares of Uyuni, Bolivia. It transformed it to a desert sand. It's the same thing as they like to amplify the the desert they created 300 years, Atacama Desert. But if they would do it in the right way, it would come back. It was a forest. It was a marvelous forest. And we harvested on that place after intervening in a way together with the llama, not against the llama, together with the black panther, not against, together with the vegetation of the place, and interacting in a intelligent way, or let's say useful, beneficial way, managed to harvest 13,000 kilo of quinoa per hectare without any fertilizer, only doing the right job, together with the vegetation, not against, using the natural original ecosystem of the place as the guide, as a guide for our way of interaction. Then trying to do what it's, I believe, which probably is foreseen for us, to give more dynamic, and at the same time only adding, I believe that, I'm sure, each civilization has its marvelous aspects. One of the actual global civilization is technology. I love technology. Technology is wonderful. We could do so many things with technology, but we use technology in order to make war. Instead of doing something intelligent, we use it in order to make war. And all whatever we do is always against life. It's not.
Well, Ernst, look, here we are. Here we are using technology to connect you in Brazil to John in the Netherlands and Vandana in India and me in Australia and people all around the world, to take the incredible learnings that you have as thought leaders and pioneers and activists to what can we do to really take what you've learned. So if we can, Ernst, we maybe go pass the question on to John at this point. But John, in terms of your own amazing experience of initiating ecosystem regeneration camps all around the world, and the unique experience that you've got in building upon what Ernst was just sharing there, what do you think are the best local to global kind of solutions that we've got? The idea here is to work towards ensuring the guaranteed access of all humans and animals to living soil. So building upon what Ernst has shared and what Dr. Vandana Shiva has shared, John, what do you think are the best way forward, or the best local to global solutions for that?
Well, I think first of all, if anything, any being that's alive on the earth is a representation of all life since the beginning of time. It can't be any other way. And so I know that Ernst is correct in what he's saying about the importance of this symbiotic relationships, the co-evolution of life on Earth. And I think that humanity has been representing very poorly its evolutionary niche. I think the evolutionary niche for humans is to be able to express wisdom and understanding and knowledge and pass it to the next generation through intellectual and emotional and spiritual understanding. And that we took a wrong path to believe in materialism, to elevate materialism to become selfish and greedy. And this is not very helpful to anything. And what I've seen with the camps movement is that people have been in the materialist world and in the mercantilistic world and in the world of competition and domination. There's no satisfaction there. Anybody who's seeking to just get more material possessions to themselves, they will only want more because they won't find any satisfaction, and they continue that way, and it's just not satisfying. And the person who dies with the most stuff doesn't win anything. It's just a terrible thing where they have to recognize that they wasted their life instead of doing something which was more profound and important. And so I think that in the camps movement, what I've noticed is, first of all, it's not culturally specific. So there are now camps in 6 continents. Everybody can understand we have to restore the earth. As soon as we start thinking not about selfish, what's in it for me, but we realize that if we work for the good of all, we are working in our own personal benefit. But if we don't work for the benefit of all, nothing that we do is going to really actually be in our own self-interest. And so what we're seeing is that people are willing to go and to do work, and that it's not difficult to restore soils. It's not difficult to restore the hydrological function. That's what nature wants to do. So that if we align human behavior with the natural evolutionary successions, the principles of natural evolutionary succession, it goes much faster than we imagine. And another thing that Ernst mentioned is that the concepts of exotic species and invasive species. In the early work that I was documenting in the upper and middle reaches of the Yellow River, they were using mostly non-native pioneer species. And they were planting out massive monocultures of these fast-growing plants. But now, almost 30 years later, when you go there, you don't see a monoculture at all, because they just processed the soils and created a canopy and held the moisture closer to the earth, reduced the temperatures, and then the legacy genome reestablished itself. So you see a massively diverse functional system. And in other parts of the world, we can see that it's possible to bring back perennial stream flows in not such a long time, because we have to recognize that it's connected to the percentages and total amounts of biodiversity, biomass, and accumulated organic matter. And that this is not only about water, it's also about photosynthesis, carbon sequestration, and oxygen release, and that it's about fertility in the soil. So solving our problems are all interrelated. And that suggests that if we also consider what is value, because we've tried to suggest through domination and exploitation that materialism and domination and differentiation in social status has some kind of value, but it actually has no value. And the true value of oxygenated atmosphere and fresh water systems and the ability to have fertile soils and the amazing biodiversity has been zero in what we call the economy, which is the gross domestic product. You could do any kind of terrible thing. If it has cash flow, that would be said to be more valuable than the air, the water, and the soil, and the biodiversity. It's simply false. So understanding that it's simply false, we have to say, well, that has to change. You can't leave a false statement and a false concept at the core of security for all life. And it's really it's really the danger is to human civilization, not to the earth, not to life. It's human civilization that's at threat. Because if you have a species die out, the top of the food chain is the most at risk. That's us. And so we need to see this, we need to understand this, and we need to transform. If the central intention of human civilization becomes to restore ecological function on a planetary scale, we can't fail. And if that's the central intention, then the economy must be based on ecological function, not on materialism. If the economy is based on ecological function, it's vastly greater than anything that human beings have ever made and everything that human beings will ever make. And it is self-replicating and it's alive instead of it's dead and toxic and building up. I mean, I've been considering what archaeologists are going to think about this time. They're going to find like a garbage layer. The archaeologists in the future are like, what is this? What are we seeing when we dig down here? Oh, look, it's like a plastic nappy, that can never degrade. It's like, oh my God. So, we have to think about this. And if we decide that the central intention of human civilization is to survive, I mean, we're not hardwired to commit suicide, we're hardwired to procreate. So let's understand this and let's do what we need to do. And we're not simply individuals. The other thing I would say that's critically important and that you also see in ecosystem restoration camps is that we have to go from me to we. I can't restore the earth, but human civilization in aggregate can. We all must understand that we're not individuals exactly. We're individuals, but we're not only individuals. We are part of a meta-organism. And that meta-organism is not even simply human beings. It's an interspecies coevolution and interbeing. So now I think I'm becoming much more philosophical as I get older. I'm 70 now. And this is like a revelation that I, am just passing through. And that's okay because life continues and we're part of this. And our contribution must be to the sum of human knowledge and to some improvement and understanding that will help to ensure the survival of humanity. This is the only planet that we know that has an oxygenated atmosphere, a fresh water system, fertile soils, and amazing biodiversity. How could we destroy this? And how could we imagine that we could terraform Mars or some other planet when we're destroying the only planet that has an oxygenated atmosphere and a freshwater system? Mm-hmm. So when we get to this point of understanding, then we're forced to realize that all of our effort has to go in this direction and that we can't waste our time with things which are petty and trivial. We have to be focused on the profound importance. I've called this the great work of our time. Mm-hmm. Because if we don't do this, there won't be a future for our own descendants. And I think we owe this to our ancestors. We also have to realize that many generations of human beings have made mistakes and that all of us are fallible. And so we need to learn forgiveness. We need to live in grace. We need to do we need to understand as much as we can and do what we know is correct. So we know now it's possible to restore large-scale degraded ecosystems, including ecosystems that have been degraded over very long historical periods and over very large areas. So this is the task. This is not cosmic consciousness. This is the next step in human evolution. If we take this step, we can continue to learn. If we don't take this step, well, we're going to learn about the consequences. We are already learning about the consequences of massive degradation to Earth system and to inequity and inequality in society. So I think the best way forward is to all collaborate. And I've been thinking about the infrastructures that are needed. I think we have to, right now, build central kitchens in all communities and treat food as a right for everyone to have. That it's not a commodity, it's not for sale, it's the right of every living being to have food. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, if we can somehow survive this period of ecological disruptions, then that's great. We can feed everybody in our community. No one has to be hungry. And I would say we also have to make creator spaces. No, just a moment. No, I'm in a Zoom. Stop. So stop. I'm on hundreds of people. So maybe thousands. So what we need to do is have central kitchens, creator spaces, and we also need to have cultural stages. If we have creator spaces, we can fix everything that's broken. We can upcycle and recycle the materials. We'll stop with the insane consumerism where everything is broken, gets thrown out, and you have to buy new things. Let's not do that anymore. Let's also design our furniture and the things that we use so that 500 years from now, our descendants are using the same table and the same chair. And it's a piece of art, and it's an heirloom, and it's beautiful. And let's have cultural stages, because we're not supposed to be advertising and marketing and doing all this stuff and having political propaganda and just lies. We're supposed to be transmitting wisdom from one generation to the next. So we can do that. We have all the mechanisms to do that. We can communicate with every human being on the planet simultaneously and instantaneously. The question is, what do we say? So let's be calm. Let's be kind. We have to learn gratitude, and we have to reflect forgiveness and grace and ultimately love. So this, I think, is where we need to go. This is what I think we all need to do together. And I think I use this word in a strange way. I think it trumps everything. If we love each other, it's done. We can restore the earth. We can feed everybody. There's no one who will die in the street. Let's do the right thing. Mm-hmm. That's what I think is best.
Oh, that's excellent, John. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. There's so much in there to unpack, isn't there, Vandana? And this idea of redefining value, I think, is very much at the heart of what John is sharing there. And again, just seeing the interconnectedness of all of the different elements. And we know that, while today we're talking about living soil, tomorrow we'll be talking about healthy water. And on Monday, we'll be talking about vitalizing food. These are the first 3 of the 7 core needs. So I loved your idea of the community kitchens there, John, as well. But Vandana, in the time that we have, it'd be wonderful to hear any response from you. There are some questions coming in, but perhaps just in terms of the time that we have, this idea of what can we do to advance these collective efforts. You're doing incredible amount of activity, educating and changing minds and attitudes and hearts, and operating at a global level with your activism and your education. But building upon what Ernst has shared and what John has just shared, what do you think we can do to take this forward globally?
What I've learned over 50 years of my ecological work is that the two currencies of life, of the infrastructure of life, are food and nutrition and water, and of course, energy. So taking care of the living soil is the way to take care of living food that doesn't send us to hospital, but gives us the long life and the healthy life. I think reclaiming food as a commons, reclaiming soil as a commons, because the soil will not be living if it is not a commons of all life. If it is purely a property of the big, and the land grabbers are having such a big field day just now, the technocrats are now owning land. They now want to control our food. They're talking of food without farms and farming without farmers. Now, if then that is the dystopia, then living soil becomes the ground for peace, and it becomes the ground for nourishment. And while I was listening to John and I was realizing that what we need, and we can, that's what Navdanya has shown, that when we take care of the soil, and the soil gives us abundance of biodiversity, when measured in nutrition, not in terms of commodity production, nutrition, we grow more food, not just for human beings. We grow more food for the soil, we grow more food for the birds, we grow more food for the insects. And I think I would conclude today's discussion realizing that if we start relating to food as a gift of living soil, and start developing the consciousness that we have to eat food that feeds the soil, that it closes the cycle. It closes the cycle locally on your place, your garden, but it closes the broken carbon. To me, climate change is nothing but a broken carbon cycle. And the photosynthesis, the hydrology, the living soil is what puts this living carbon cycle back together. And that is what taking care of the soil is, and that's what eating is. That's the beauty, that eating the right way and taking care of living soil is the same action. And therefore, no one needs to go hungry. The soil doesn't need to get desertified. And we definitely, I think Ernst said this false idea that too many people, if you even talk about the 7 point whatever billion, there's that many mouths. But can you imagine each of them has two hands? And those two hands are our instrument of relating to the living soil, of caring and hugging and loving the soil. And these two hands now have to become the transformation from destruction. And hands don't destroy. It's the chemicals that destroy, it's the fossil fuels that destroy, it's the drones that destroy. I think hands are designed to hug. The Chipko movement was hugging, and they're designed to hug. And we need to embrace the living soil with all our being, and the rest will happen.
Oh, magnificent, magnificent. Embraced the living soil with all our being, and the rest will happen. It sounds like a pathway to peace. We love what you said about living soil becomes the ground for peace. How perfect that we would begin with this conversation, our first day of Peace Week, Ernst. And just so in your final comments as well, Ernst Götsch, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your wisdom and your experience. It's deeply valued. What do you think is the best way for us, building upon what Vandana has just shared and John's wonderful insights too, Ernst, about how can we take this forward globally? What are some of the pathways you see as a way forward as being sort of opening up before us, if you like?
Well, I can only say Vandana Shiva said it in so beautiful way. I can't say it in a better way. Let's Tony give a commentary or something about this, but I can't say it in a better way. It's said.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ernst. Thank you for that. And John, just in terms of your own sense of this, the work that's ahead of us. Obviously, we have expertise that's here. and we have a community of people who understand that, what Vandana Shiva has just shared, that living soil as really the ground for peace. What can we do to support what you are doing? What can we do to advance the work of the regeneration camps? What can we do to go forward together to ensure that this core need of living soil is guaranteed for all humans and animals?
Well, I think this concept of unity is tremendous. That we have to act as a species on a planetary scale, and in order to do that, obviously there are some minorities that are violent or extreme, but this is not the majorities. The majority of people around the world are wonderful, and if we all gather together and help each other and share, then we're going to have a completely different outcome. Right now, it's suggested that, and we're socialized to believe that we're supposed to be just gathering things to ourselves to take care of ourselves and our families. And then so we all have our own tools. We all have our own homes and things. And, I think we can simplify a little bit, especially if the situation gets worse. So I think the central kitchens, creator spaces, and cultural stages are really important if the situation gets worse. And we better do it before the situation gets worse, because if it gets worse without these basic infrastructure in place, then it's going to be quite terrible. So we also have to protect the legacy genomes. We have to distribute this. We can't let corporations say we own the DNA or we own this thing. So the seeds, the genome has to be distributed and shared so everyone can have it. And this is quite understood in the commons. And so we have to go back, and we also have to realize that many of the things which are going on are just fundamentally wrong. Like, how can you go into another place and kill people and enslave them and then say, like, I stole it and it's mine? That's supposedly a legal precedent? I mean, it's ridiculous. So telling the truth about what's happened in the past, and also look at the example of Nelson Mandela. He grows in an apartheid situation, which I think it's the most repugnant of social situations. He's imprisoned for decades, and he comes out and forgives the people who did this, which also probably stops a massive violent episode and takes us to a new level of civilization. That's what we need to consider. Things can go in different ways. And if we all start to share, I would recommend joining the ecosystem restoration camps movement as a supporting member. Maybe share $10 a month. If that gets to be 1 million people sharing $10 a month, I think this will become the largest restoration movement, because you'll have 120 million euros per year and no big administration, just camps forming as fast as possible. We've grown to 55 camps in just 5.5 years. So it could go to thousands and tens of thousands of camps. And if they all have central kitchens and creator spaces and cultural stages, then they can help people to learn and to train and to feed and to do all this work that needs to be done. So this is something that could be really positive. And it's not about institution building. It's not about ownership. It's about stewardship and empowerment of the most people around the world. And it can act like a mycelial network that spreads whatever is learned to everybody. And everybody is either a teacher or they're a student. If somebody knows more than I do, they're my teacher. If they know less than I do, then they're my student. And that's our way of transmitting knowledge. And we can have faith and trust and in each other because we all want what's best.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you so much. I really want, there are more questions here. This is a subject, Ernst and John and Vandana, that people are obviously very, very passionate about and are very interested in finding out more. I know that some people will want to maybe take you up, Vandana, on the university and coming to Earth University and taking the courses. We hope, John, too, that people will support the work you are doing, the incredible work that you're doing, the essential work you're doing with the regeneration camps. And yes,
I would just mention that there's the Soil Food Web from Elaine Ingham's work has joined with the camps movement. We've also joined with the Archangel Ancient Tree Archive to protect some of the most ancient DNA. So there's chances for all organizations to collaborate. We shouldn't be trying to create different organizations. We should be having all the organizations come together so that we can, and I think gradually what happens is there's really no us and them. There's just us. There's just humanity. And so some people in humanity have gotten selfish and destructive and want power over others. But I think we can't confront them and yell at them and be angry and adopt their tactics. I think what we have to do is we have to forgive them and maybe go away from them and restore ecosystems and take care of everybody. And then gradually, when they're very lonely, then they'll want to come over and go dancing or listen to music or have a good meal. And we'll say, well, hey, welcome, it's good to see you. Glad you've come over here. We don't want to be in an abiotic system with anger and violence and toxicity. We would rather have clean air, clean water, clean food, a lot of fun, and work together for the good of all. So I think this is still possible. I hope so.
thank you so much. Thank you so much. Vandana,
Thank you, everyone.
yes, thank you so much for being with us. And John, I think you've really summed up what the 7 core needs are all about, and that the value of meeting them for everybody, humans and animals, is the pathway to peace. So thank you, Dr. Vandana Shiva, for being with us and setting such a high bar with Ernst Götsch and John Louis for Peace Week and for day 1 of this 7 days gathering. We welcome you to stay with us for our opening ceremony, but we thank you dearly for being with us and for sharing your wisdom with us.
Does staying here